Jigsaw's infamous bathroom game didn't play out quite like he drew it up in his plans. To hear about the key detail that could have changed everything, stick around to the end of this video. This video is sponsored by the CZsWorld merch store. Welcome to another episode of Things You Missed. This week, I want to play a game. So we'll be covering the first major motion picture from James Wan. I feel like I've talked a lot about Wan's work here on the channel, and I have talked about his franchises before, but this is actually the first time I've done a Things You Missed specifically on a film that he directed. So the clock is ticking, let's let the game begin. The first item of note comes in before the movie even starts when we see the Twisted Pictures logo animation. The company was started in order to produce Saw, and the intro is inspired by the razor wire trap, which is the second trap in the movie, where a man named Paul is asked to climb out of a cage riddled with barbed wire and cut himself in order to escape. The movie itself opens by showing us a little light floating around in the bathtub. We don't know what it is yet, but if you look very closely, it's attached to the key to Adam's shackle, which goes down the drain, which opens up when he wakes up in a panic. In Saw 3, we find out that it was Amanda who placed the key there, and I think she was supposed to put it somewhere else to give Adam a chance to get it. This means that the game was designed with the possibility of Adam being able to walk freely around the bathroom, and there's more evidence of this later on. Dr. Gordon is already awake at the beginning of the movie, and he demonstrates the reason that Jigsaw tested him, his lack of passion for life, in his opening dialogue.
You're not dead.
Who's that?
There's no point in yelling. I already tried.
He sounds defeated. He sounds like he doesn't care if he lives or dies. The goal of Jigsaw's game was basically to change that, to enlighten these prisoners on the joys of life. To symbolize this enlightenment, we see a big booming shot of the overhead lights, literally turning on above them. This would also allow the glow-in-the-dark paint to begin to charge. The bathroom itself is very strange. It's a dilapidated men's room, but with no dividers. It looks commercial. There are multiple toilets, sinks, and showers, so the inclusion of a bathtub is strange. I think the bathtub represents Jigsaw's idea of rebirth. Adam awakes from it and is thrust into the cold reality of the bathroom, just as we are born from the womb into the harsh actuality of our world. We later learn that the bathroom is located in a tunnel network underground. John was once an engineer for low-income living solutions, so I wonder if the bathroom was once part of some kind of communal shelter. However, the sign seen in the tunnels at the end of the movie says "Caution, raw sewage," so perhaps the bathroom was connected to some kind of sewage treatment center. When Adam first noticed John hiding in plain sight, pretending to be dead, he ironically makes an observation.
First dead body I've ever seen. Different in real life. They don't move.
Which is a nice touch considering what happens in the final scene and really adds to Adam's sense of terror. After beginning to solve the clues of the game, Adam obtains the tape recorder and puts in his tape.
If anyone ever uses the excuse, it's just a game, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, are you kidding me? You're so stupid. And anyone that ever uses the excuse it's just a game is a horrible human being and is lazy.
I don't get it.
There is a little clue left on Dr. Gordon's tape about the identity of Jigsaw. Let's roll that clip.
Left to do. You shoot yourself.
This is why we have to have social distancing. The coughing alludes to the fact that Gordon already knows the killer, or at least he would have if he had taken the time to appreciate the human side of his dying patients.
His name is John. Dr. Gordon. He's a very interesting person.
The other clue whispered at the end of the tape, "Follow your heart," leads Adam to find the hacksaws. As the audience, we can see that there's something else in the bag, the photos that Adam had taken of Dr. Gordon, but Gordon himself cannot see them. Gordon eventually realizes that he and Adam may have been placed in the bathroom by Jigsaw, the unknown serial killer that Dr. Gordon was once a suspect for. The cops who questioned him are Stephen Singh and David Tapp, and we see a flashback of their first encounters at Jigsaw crime scenes. They're introduced to the remains of Paul by Allison Carey. One thing that I found interesting is that her badge says she's the deputy coroner. In Saw 2, she's a homicide detective for the newly formed serial killer task force, so that tells me that the loss of Detectives Singh and Tapp resulted in her getting a promotion. There's also some important information on the evidence bag telling us the date that Paul was found was March 19th, 2004. This is shortly before a 6-month time skip, which lands the date of the bathroom game somewhere in October of 2004, which is also when Saw was released. We're first introduced to who John Kramer actually is in Gordon's flashback at the hospital, and John has openly displayed his design sketch for the reverse bear trap on the table. Just like for anyone to see while he's asleep, I guess. I mean, if you're gonna be a serial killer, maybe don't do that, but just a suggestion, if you do, you might wanna hide the evidence just a little bit. I mean, there's also a green X on the opposite page, perhaps symbolic of the X marks the spot from the bathroom game. Gordon ends up being cleared as a suspect, but sticks around to hear the testimony of the first survivor, Amanda, who tells the story of how she woke up in a room and a tape started playing.
Hello, Amanda.
The upcoming 9th movie is called Spiral, and the name draws inspiration from the spirals on the cheeks of Billy the Puppet, and later the large spiral seen in John's workshop at the mannequin factory. The spiraling camera movement when John is first shown on screen, you know, the one where he's pretending to be dead, could also be a connection. In my Spiral trailer analysis, I talked about how I think the spiral could be kind of like a new religious icon that John is inventing, but I guess we'll have to find out when the movie comes out. When Amanda goes to try to retrieve the key to the reverse bear trap, there's a secret message from Jigsaw hidden on the wall. If you pause at just the right moment, you can read it. The message on the wall in Amanda's cell reads, "If you try to keep your life for yourself, you will lose it. But if you can give your life to me, you will find true life." This message doesn't seem to apply to Amanda, but it may have been part of a previous game for a man described as being her cellmate, Donnie Greco. Donnie doesn't seem to have much of a chance to survive. He is essentially neutralized when Amanda is forced to cut through his stomach in order to retrieve her key. But Jigsaw always believes in giving his victims a second chance. So I think Donnie already lost his game, and his punishment was that he would now die in Amanda's game. This message was probably part of the rules for Donnie's first game. When Amanda cuts open his stomach, the camera cuts to a shadow on the wall, a reference to a technique seen in early German expressionism films, like one of the earliest influential horror movies ever, Nosferatu. I should also note that many of the stylish techniques used in Nosferatu were done to save money, as Germany was still picking up the pieces from World War I at the time that it was made. Saw was also made for a very low budget, but rather than picking up the pieces from World War I, the producers of Saw were picking up the pieces of a second mortgage that they had to put on their production headquarters, and luckily for them, Saw ended up being very successful and spawning many sequels. While those sequels may not have been planned from the beginning, I'd still like to point out something that I found interesting about Lawrence Gordon's home. This will contain spoilers for the series, so skip ahead 20 seconds if you haven't seen the rest of the movies. Gordon has this clock in his living room with these little ornaments that look vaguely like Jigsaw puzzle pieces. This gear could also represent the idea of mechanical engineering. As you may know, Jigsaw was once a civil engineer, and I like to think that these could be little clues that Lawrence Gordon would one day make the perfect successor to Jigsaw. There are clocks all over Gordon's house, including both an hourglass and analog clock on his desk, and that all ties into part of the reason behind Jigsaw's work: time. All of this starts when John finds out from Dr. Gordon how much time he has to live. When he learns that, he learns how valuable his time on Earth really is. Back in the present, at the bathroom, Dr. Gordon tells Adam about his favorite picture of his family, which all three of them are in, rare because someone usually has to take the photo. The shot is missing from his wallet, but I think we actually do see it in his living room if you pause during the chase at the end of the movie. I mean, it makes sense considering that this family just seems to keep reusing the same few photos all over the place, over and over and over. The next flashback shows Gordon putting his daughter to bed, and he tries to calm her fears by doing the "this little piggy" nursery rhyme with her. In John Kramer's MO, pigs represent rebirth. That's why all of his followers don the pig masks when carrying out tasks for Jigsaw. After he leaves, his daughter sees Zepp hiding in the closet, in what almost certainly seems to be an homage to that scene from Black Christmas. Roll it. Meanwhile, Detective Tapp has been unable to accept Lawrence Gordon's innocence even after the doctor provides an alibi, and spies on him from a messy apartment across the way. What I cannot answer is why Detective Tapp has Amy's coffee though. What have you done to Amy, Detective Tapp?
What are you doing to them, you bastard?
Yeah, the apartment is a mess, and the walls are covered in reconnaissance photos of the doctor and newspaper headlines about the Jigsaw murders. Surprisingly, none of the names or authors mentioned in these articles are Easter eggs or references to anything. There is one connection that would be made retroactively when Saw the video game was released in 2009. The author of this article is Oswald McGillicuddy, a name that was given to the journalist character that you save in the game, although the game is not considered canon. The actual contents of the article, as we often see in movies, have nothing to do with the headline. This one's about a toy called Goofy Clay that exploded and destroyed a trailer home in Reno. The only other semi-interesting tidbit I found about these headlines was this article, which references Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which doesn't really have anything to do with Saw, but is just a well-respected movie in general. There would be a more meaningful reference shortly after, when Singh and Tapp discover the location of Jigsaw's hideout. The map they use doesn't seem to correlate to any real-world locations that I could find on Google Maps, but they end up determining that the fire alarm heard in the tape must have been from an emergency at 213 Stygian Street. Stygian Street is a reference to James Wan's first independent film, Stygian, and the address number, 213, is a reference to the area code of Lacey Production Center, where Saw was filmed. When they arrived there, the workshop contained a miniature version of the bathroom, but Dr. Gordon's shackle is replaced with an electrical wire, which is connected to this battery. This is perhaps our first clue about the electric shock component connected to each of their chains. Jigsaw first used this on Adam to ensure that he wasn't cheating. then on Gordon to try to snap him out of his miserable wallowing. And then again on Adam to make him drop the gun he was holding. And then on the audience, because the ending was such a shocking twist. Yeah, okay, I'll go off myself for that pun. John's Workshop also provided another clue about the true method that Adam could have used to win and survive the bathroom game. The reason that the miniature version of the bathroom contains figures to represent Gordon and Jigsaw but not Adam could be because when we see this, it's still 6 months before the game takes place, and Adam had not yet been hired to photograph Gordon, and so was not yet a target of John Kramer. However, it's clear that the game only works with the second player. So I think the fact that we don't see Adam in this diagram is because of what I mentioned near the beginning of this video. Adam was supposed to have an opportunity to retrieve his key and have the ability to free roam around the bathroom, and possibly escape. Now, I'm not saying he was definitely supposed to get out of his shackle, otherwise why bother with the whole electric shock component, but it seems like the freedom to move about may have been something that Adam could have earned. Also, this may be the same miniature used by the set designers of the movie when they created the actual bathroom, because it actually says Saw bathroom set right here. Guess we can call this James Wan's coffee cup moment. Zepp watches the game unfold from a little area set up within Gordon's home. I noticed there's a microphone there, which makes me wonder if there was ever supposed to be an aspect of the game where Zepp communicates with them directly. Or maybe Zepp was just planning on starting a little podcast. The Jigsaw Victim Podcast. Let's see if can top that, Bobby Dagan. Zepp watches as Gordon discovers the hidden box containing the phone, causing him to remember the night that he was captured, and every time I watch it, it makes me crazy. I mean, why would Adam, who is trying to secretly spy on Dr. Gordon, use the flash while taking photos of him? I mean, that makes no sense. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry, but you're an idiot, Adam. You're an idiot.
You know who I am.
Lawrence becomes more and more suspicious of Adam's secrets, and rightfully so, and asks what else he may be hiding.
Well, let's see. On my 6th birthday, my best friend at the time, Scott Tibbs, stabbed me with a rusty nail. I didn't tell you about that.
Now on the DVD for Saw 2, there's a bonus video called the Scott Tibbs documentary, which is a found footage short created by Scott.
I had to find out more. So I acquired this sweet little camera, and I'm making my own documentary about this sick f***er. Scott Tibbs style, baby.
Yeah, it's not very good. Okay, it's kind of one of the most embarrassing things I've seen a professional film studio put out, and it's considered to be non-canon to the Saw story. But I did want to bring it up because the character Scott himself is still canon, and there will be more references to him in future Things You Missed episodes. When it comes down to the end of the game, Lawrence finally caves in, saws off his foot, gets the bullet and the gun, but decides to try the play dead trick with Adam one last time. This attempt was a little bit smarter because it didn't require any acting ability on Adam's part. We all know how that turned out last time. I think Lawrence gives the signal when the camera cuts back to his head right here, when he probably winks at Adam. The play dead trick also calls back to earlier in the film where Jigsaw does the same thing to trick Singh. It ends up being used many times throughout the Saw franchise, so I'll be sure to point those out in future episodes of Things You Missed. The movie ends with Gordon passing the test and Adam failing to achieve his enlightenment, and as a result, Jigsaw locks him away in the dark.
Game over.
But unlike all the sports leagues right now, there would be games to look forward to in the future, and I'm going to be covering them right here on CZsWorld. Join me next week for my first Saw episode of Horror History and the next episode of Things You Missed, where I'll be covering my personal favorite film in the Saw franchise, Saw 2. If you love Saw, you won't want to miss out on any of that stuff, so make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week. Ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.